You guys know how much I love Snow White, and in honor of the new live action movie coming out tomorrow, here's how I made this Snow White cosplay in 2 days.
Okay, I totally didn't film this part, but I wrapped my body in plastic wrap and tape and cut out the pieces of the corset. Like this one is the strap. And then that's gonna be my pattern, and then I'm cutting it out on this fabric which goes in between the layers of the corset to make it stiffer, and then I'm going to sew them together and put in the boning so that you can add support to the body of the corset. So I'm trying to make this cosplay with as many things as I have in my closet as possible. So my grandma gave me this. She like cut it off of one of her dresses, so I think I'm gonna spray paint it gold and use it for the front of the corset. I got this gold ribbon off of Amazon. This is part of like a costume that I got a long time ago. And then I also got like a really cheap pack of white lace to go around the neck of the corset. And the biggest purchase that I made for this cosplay is the fabric. I got a really nice satin rose patterned like blue fabric for the corset, so that's like the most expensive thing.
So after I gathered everything I needed, I obviously didn't explain this very well in the video, but this technique is pretty common. You wrap your body in saran wrap and tape around it to hold the saran wrap together, and you basically draw on yourself each panel of the corset, and then you can cut it out and basically make your own custom corset that's fit to your body. These are the panels from the saran wrap and tape that you can see I'm tracing here onto this fabric. This fabric is called fusible interfacing, which you can put in between the layers of your corset to make it thicker and stiffer. And instead of making an entire skirt from scratch, I got this yellow sundress to put under the corset to save me some time instead. And here's me cutting out the different pieces of the corset around my fusible interfacing. A lot of people were asking me why I use these like jagged edge scissors to cut these out, and it's because these scissors are specifically made for cutting fabric, and it helps it not fray as much when the edges are raw like that. This is my first time ever making a corset with boning in it, so I was being super slow and careful about each panel because I didn't want to mess it up, which was pretty scary because I was on a time crunch to finish this cosplay before the movie came out. Now after this part, I ended up working on the sleeves, which I didn't get to film very much of, but I cut out all the raindrop shapes in the blue satin first and stacked it on top of this old red cotton fabric I had from a different project because I wanted the red underneath to show through like in the original cartoon. I think I show it a little bit in this clip, but I cut little cross shapes where I needed the raindrop shapes to go and folded the raw edges underneath the side of the fabric that wasn't going to show and pinned them really delicately in a raindrop shape and sewed really slowly along that edge so that I could get the shape I wanted. I couldn't find a pattern or a tutorial for this anywhere, so I was just kind of winging it, and a lot of other cosplayers that do Snow White don't actually do the raindrop shapes on her sleeves either, and they use like ribbon or strips of fabric or some other method, but I really wanted it to look accurate to the movie. I was doing a lot of research on the original story of Snow White while making this cosplay, and I think these teardrop shapes on her sleeves that kind of show the red fabric underneath are a reference to how her lips are supposed to be red as blood. Oh, and because the fabric I chose was satin, you can burnish the edges like this so that it won't fray. Snow White comes from an old Germanic folk story that has a lot of elements from different cultures and countries in Europe. For example, the description of Snow White's appearance, where her skin is white as snow, her hair is dark as ebony, and her lips as red as blood, or her cheeks are as red as blood. Similar theme throughout many folk stories across Northern Europe, so I think it's a pretty crucial part to the original story. The dwarves are also a really big part of Germanic folklore. They represent the underworld. It's also said that in the original story, the 7 dwarves were supposed to represent the 7 mountains. When Snow White goes to the 7 dwarves' house, it's supposed to be symbolism of her dying and descending into the underworld, which is why she only sees the dwarves at night after they've come home from quote-unquote work. In the original story and the movie, Snow White is supposed to be quite young, so her mind sort of fills in these blanks and unexplained moments as the dwarves going to work, which watch or something, I guess she can understand a bit better than dying in the underworld. So I was kind of hoping that with the new live action, almost 100 years after the original movie came out, we'd get some kind of tie back to the original folk elements of the story that the original kind of skipped over. I also kind of hoped, at least design-wise, it would be a little bit more similar to the original, at least to pay homage to the film and its impact on the animation industry. That being said, I haven't seen it yet, so I shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Here is the dress almost finished. I really didn't want to sew on the other sleeve, so here I am showing off the bodice with one sleeve. It's almost done at this point. I have no pattern for the shape of the sleeves either. I just kind of cut out a rectangular-ish shape in the fabric and then gathered both sides of it to give it that puffed appearance. I don't even really know how I did that. I wish I could explain. If you guys are really dying to know how I did that sleeve, I will try and make a tutorial for it. Whenever I have to sew on sleeves, I just kind of wing it and pray that it comes out, because it is my absolute least favorite part of the process, hence why I am procrastinating it so hard and marking the center of it right here on the strap. I was just procrastinating, let's be so real. Also, I don't know if you can tell by the way I was holding it, but I accidentally almost sewed on this sleeve upside down. I think I'm gonna realize it at some point around this time in the video, because I was like, why isn't it fitting around the shoulder of my dress form? But anyway, Disney has gotten away with a lot of like darker themes in the past in their animated films, and I don't know why they're kind of letting go of that with their live action remakes. I don't know if they think kids are gonna be scared. I mean, okay, a lot of kids are scared of the original animation of Snow White because the witch is scary, but come on, she's supposed to be scary. Personally, I think they can go harder on the fact that her mom was so jealous of her that she wanted her to die. Did you know that when the huntsman was supposed to take her to the forest and kill her, he actually killed a boar, and in some stories he killed a bear cub and brought the heart back to the queen and she ate it? Yeah, I bet you didn't know that. That's a super important part of the story that needs to be in the Disney version. Obviously, I am joking, but you know what I mean. Like, they can go a little bit darker. Not everything has to be super happy and birds chirping and all of that. Girl, just sew on the damn sleeve. Why is this taking so long? Anyway, because I totally forgot to film this part, I should probably explain that yellow tulle that's like randomly hanging off of my dress form. So I got like 2-ish yards of yellow tulle, and instead of making the skirt from scratch, I just pleated it and sewed one side of it to a ribbon so I could tie it around my waist and hide it underneath my corset. I think it's pretty clever considering I was cutting a lot of shortcuts. And also, if you're kind of scared about sewing two things together that are hard to sew together, like this sleeve onto this strap, you can hand sew it first to get it really good and secure in that position. Oh, there's me realizing it was upside down. Yeah. But anyway, you can hand sew it into the position you want it to go in, and then you can do the sewing machine part. It keeps it in place a lot better than using pins, especially if you have to sew something that's like on a curve, like a sleeve, and it doesn't really show too much on the finished project, so that is what I would recommend. I also didn't really show painting the lace that's going to go onto the corset and bedazzling it, because at that point I was on 2 nights of all-nighters and I hadn't slept and I just really wanted to finish it. So I ended up covering that lace in gold acrylic paint because I didn't really think the spray paint was going to work, but I covered it in gold spray paint, which does make it kind of stiff, but it's okay because it goes on a corset, which is kind of stiff. And instead of sewing on this ribbon, I was kind of on a time crunch at this point, so I used super glue and super glued this like gold ribbon trim to the hem of the corset. I also randomly bedazzled it one by one with little gems that were gold, blue, and some of them were red, and they sparkled really nicely in the sun. And that is the finished cosplay. I hope you guys liked this video and my ramblings about absolutely nothing and everything. I'm sorry it wasn't really a tutorial, but yeah, this is the finished look. To recap, I am wearing a yellow sundress underneath the corset. I tied the gold tulle around my waist with a ribbon underneath the corset as well. And honestly, you can't even tell that the skirt underneath and the corset on top are 2 separate parts, that they're not connected. And in cosplay, and in everything visual really, it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be believable. I hope you enjoyed, thank you for watching, and let me know what you think of the live action Snow White. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more cosplay projects. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Bye!